Well, hi there, this is Big G coming to you from the Reheading. I hope you're doing well this week. How's your week been? How's your life? Hope you're coping. I hope you understand the pandemic criteria better than I do. I have no idea what the lockdown systems are at the moment, but I'm never out anyway, so no biggie. I've got myself a new phone. Unfortunately, when I'm recording now, I get to see myself, which is I'm not really into that. Getting to pick out the spots and all that, eh? So anyway, I thought I'd record another session. Moving on from different ones, I want to look at health now and let us consider certain things of health and see how we can respond to them and see how God can be part of them in our lives as we live out day to day. I want to take you back now to, I think it was 20 years ago now. And this lady came to me and told me this: I can't see you anymore. I was absolutely gutted. I said to her, but I love you. She said, sorry, but I can't see you. I was distraught and beyond belief. My life projection had just completely stopped. I saw my life with her together. I saw us having children, raising a family, going through the good times in life and holidays. I saw us being married. I saw us growing old together. I was looking forward to spending the rest of my life with this lady. And when she came out with those words, it just absolutely broke my heart. I was shattered, and for many months, and probably over a year, I just couldn't get past how I felt about this woman. I completely adored her. And to be told that was just shattered my life. And from there, depression has gotten worse because of my love, my affection, my desire, and just basically I adored her. The person who said this to me was my psychologist, and it was after 4-hour-long sessions. I had got besotted with this woman, this psychologist, to the point after the first hour I wanted to be with her. I took in chocolates, I took in flowers, I took in expensive biscuits. I'm even sure I took in a bottle of wine at one point. I just, within the 3 sessions, was besotted with her. I thought, she knows how to deal with me. This is the one for me. She was gorgeous, long blonde hair, obviously extremely intelligent, and I thought, this is it. After week 3, I got a row from her, and she said to me that I couldn't buy her anything any longer, but I wasn't put off. So the following week, I took chocolates, flowers, and wine in for an entire department. I just wanted to give her something, so I decided to buy stuff for everyone in the office, and there was 12. It cost me a blooming fortune, but I was so into this lady that I was willing to spend all that money. And when she decided that therapy was over, I was like, what do I do now? I don't know another 4 hours. As I left that office, my love turned to hate. I thought, how am I going to get her? I'm going to report her that she threw me out after 4 sessions. I'm going to get her fired. I'm going to make sure her career's over. I'm going to tell everyone who knows me to beware of this woman if they ever get in front of her. My love for her I was besotted with her after 3 hours. And within the space of 5 to 10 minutes, I completely hated her and wanted to see her life absolutely ruined. That was one of the services I went through, and the love-hate the relationship that I had as part of my illness. They have tried everything they can to help me with my illness. I've had one-on-one therapy sessions where they were stopped due to my aggressive behaviour. When somebody says something that doesn't communicate in my mind, I just explode, and has led to many threatening times to be in front of these people. I've tried group therapy. Never again. Absolute carnage. They're putting 10 people in the room with the same illness as me, and they expect it to be plain sailing. Now, I just can't handle it. I did quite well actually in the last one. I got to, I think it was the 8th session of a 10 session, and I flipped my lid. I was going to slaughter everybody in the room. I was practically thrown out of the place and told not to come back. If I shrink, she wouldn't see me. The one shrink told me that I was the worst patient she's ever had. I claimed that felt okay at the time, but not later on when nobody would see me. I was then sent by this woman psychiatrist who just was a horrible bird, you know what I mean? Just no nice, but she thought I was a nutter. So sent to a guy called Dr. Crab, lovely doctor up in the hospital. He was only willing to treat me if he made it clear that if I kicked off, there would be trouble. And he also pointed out that behind the door that we entered in the room were two of other nurses who were prepared to come in and calm Graham down. Good luck to them, I say. I was through Woodlands Centre, which is a mental health centre at the old Falkirk Infirmary. I had kicked off in this session, that 8th session, and was going haywire, so I was called back in to speak to a manager and one of the nurses, and I was told quite plainly straight away that if it kicked off, I was made aware there and then that there was actually police in the office beside us, having seen me before and the way that I behaved, were obviously protecting themselves. And I did find it quite funny that the two police were getting ready to come in. The way my temper goes, I don't know, I think I'd have went for the four of them. I'd have probably got leathered and put in a jail cell, but when you lose a plot like that mentally, you just go for it. I was diagnosed with an illness called borderline personality disorder when I was 15. My mental health problems started around about 9. I had been in and out the doctor. I was then put through to a child shrink, basically. Can't say psychiatrist very well. So, and at 15 I got this diagnosis. I was re-diagnosed at 30. They'd worked with me and thought maybe I'd got better, but no, I was still a Looney Tune. And again, I was re-diagnosed when I was 40. It was quite strange. I'd never really looked at BPD and tried to understand it. And when the nurse said to me, or the doctor should have said to me that you've got borderline personality disorder, she handed me a leaflet. She said to me, have a nice day, I'll see you in 6 months. And I'm like, well, what have I got? So it was a case of looking into what I have. There's absolutely no doubt that I have BPD. There are 9 criteria for borderline personality disorder. And they say if you have 5, then you have BPD. I have the 9 after going through it. There's no part of my brain that works well and functions correctly. Borderline personality disorder has been believed to be the black sheep of the mental health family. That goes in line with me being a black sheep of my normal family. So to be the black sheep of the mental health is spot on. And for me, it most definitely is. I sat in therapy once with a chap with schizophrenia. And I'll be perfectly honest, he was more sane than I was. He was sitting there quite a thing, whistling away, and I'm sitting there like a rage, wondering what was going on, what was going into. The anxiety was through the roof. I was stressed out. I was willing to murder somebody who said the wrong word to me, so it was actually quite funny. BPD is probably one of those mental health that's mainly unknown until you're diagnosed with the beast. A lot more are quite known. That doesn't make them any easier. But bipolar, schizophrenia, stuff like that, they're all people are aware of them and at a degree know what they're about. But BPD is one of these silent things. It's like a silent assassin. It comes upon you and then turns you into an assassin and you want to do ninja on everybody else. I came across this quote which was quite interesting on the Wikipedia page for psychological pain. And it says this of BPD. BPD has long believed to be the one psychiatric disorder that produced the most intense emotional pain, agony and distress in those who suffer from this condition. Studies have shown that the borderline patients experience chronic and significant emotional suffering and mental agony. I'll read that again because it's quite a bad one. BPD is long believed to be the one psychiatric disorder that produced the most intense emotional pain, agony and distress in those who suffer from this condition. Studies have shown that the borderline patients experience chronic and significant emotional suffering and mental agony. It is a beast of a sickness. It is a horrible illness. You love someone one second, you hate them the next. You plot in your mind how to take someone out of life. You live with a constant surge of wanting to take your own life. And if you like self-harm, you cut yourself, or there are many different ways. I don't like going into that, but there's many different ways that people want to cause pain to themselves. And although it's seen as a bad coping technique, it is a coping technique, believe it or not. I've known quite a few people who've taken their lives due to mental health, and particularly BPD. It's been said that there is at this point no cure for BPD. BPD is a personality disorder, so it's not as if you can treat that with drugs. So you're born with this dysfunction in your mind that makes you a complete Looney Tune. And although I joke about it, that's the way I see myself, so I'm not being disrespectful to anybody else. But my mind just works overtime on everything and never seems to give up. Even when you're sleeping, you're waking up with thoughts in your head. If you feel sorry about that. If you feel anger towards somebody, then it's rage. You're planning how to take them out of life. If you're hurting and down and wish you weren't here, you're planning how you're going to take your life the next day. There's a certain area of Grey Buchanans that I don't walk in because there are a lot of Tarzans. Many times I've passed here and the urge just to wrap it around and jump is just incredible. So I no longer walk that way. I don't know what's wrong with my throat tonight. I hope it's not that pandemic. I don't think the medical profession is actually that great either. I know there's, at the end of the day, there's not a lot they can do if they've tried the medications or the therapies. What else can they give you? I mean, there's no magic wand, there's no magic pill. They've been on that many drugs. I'm a pharmacy in the main. One thing did say to me, though, that there was nothing more he could do for me. I mean, I was going along there, although I'm a negative person, I was hoping to get something and maybe a bit of positivity that might help me. Another, and this was from a guy called Dr. Dewar. So if you've had him, he's just a wally. That's the only way to say it. He says to me, I was talking to him about suicide, how I'd planned it. He says to me, well, if you're going to take your life, there's nothing I can do. So I find you're a very encouraging little man, and that positivity of his really set me up for the week. Not. He was a plonker, absolutely. All the ones I've had, he sat there and he put his head down and he carried on to write. I swear to you, he was sleeping. Every time he was sound. I'm even sure he was snoring. One thing that I would say, coming from my experience with BPD, you do not want to be diagnosed with this evil little sod. It is a horrible illness. People don't understand you. People think they understand you. People walk away from you every time. You can't maintain relationships. You go from adoring them to wanting to murder them. And for myself, I'm quite explicit in telling them. I have threatened so many people, it's unbelievable. Sometimes I've wanted to carry it through, sometimes I've wanted to carry it through, and at times I have carried it through. I have a dodgy past when it comes to aggression. I can't hold my aggression in at times. I'm better if I'm not around people. But if I'm around people, then it just starts mental complications. This pandemic has shown us all that mental health is a major problem. It isn't something that we can put aside or ignore, because there's so many people dealing with mental health issues in this pandemic for obvious reasons. I was just thinking that I've been telling people for years how difficult mental health is. Well, people were starting to realise for themselves how debilitating it is. And in a sense, it's funny to see because we've told them it's hopeless, it's a terrible illness, it's a terrible lifestyle. Your quality of life is crap. And life just seems to go on continually without you. It's horrible. I was looking at some stats online. I wanted to give them to you. The United Nations did a wee survey, and it was regarding domestic abuse. And they report that the domestic abuse has risen by 20% worldwide. That's massive. So there's 20% of the population who never dealt with mental health before, struggling that much that it's causing them violent exchanges in their home. Just think of the women just now and the kids who are living in fear because they can't get out of their homes. Actually, the United Nations called mental health just now, with the increase of it, a shadow pandemic. So if they're taking it seriously, there's definitely a major problem. With the way things have been going the last 6 months, everybody has strung out, stress, anxiety, depression. Your whole world just feels like it's upside down and you wonder how you're going to survive it. The Rethink Mental Illness group on the internet reports that 80% of suffering mental health people who had it before this pandemic are getting worse. So, and I've noticed this myself, that there's no help for us at the moment. You can call Samaritans. Breathing Space is quite a good one, but to be perfectly honest with you, I've never liked any of them. When you speak to Breathing Space and you tell them how you feel, One thing that they say very quickly is, well, if you feel this again or you need to talk to us again, then don't be scared to ring us back. So you've just explained to them, and it's like they're trying to cut you off. So I've never found any of them quite helpful. But it does sadden me that so many of us are suffering. We can't get seen by a shrink. I got a couple of letters through of giving me a 15-minute appointment over the phone. I mean, I'm regarded as a chronic BPD, and yet what I get is a talk 15 minutes. That's no use. People need to know they're being helped. If you don't get to see a shrink, drugs will get changed. You really need to see someone like us to see how the impact on our lives. Also, another report on the Mental Health Foundation put out that in March, 62% of the population had reported that they had anxiety problems within themselves and within their homes. 62% is huge. That people who are well, who then go sick over the space of, it was a month or so. So straight away when this, and I noticed it when the pandemic hit, that everybody just fell apart. People were scared to go out. I was speaking to people on the phone and they had no way would they leave the home. You would go into the town, everybody had a mask on. They were actually standing the 2 meters. So there was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety at that time. The other one that was quite interesting was that the Office for National Statistics report says that 42% of adults were experiencing some form of depression during this pandemic. So within 68 months, 42% of adults were suffering depression. That's nearly 1 in 2 of the population. How horrific is that? It just shows you that a change of lifestyle can cause so much mental stress that we're getting to one. I mean, before this, it was like 1 in 4 would suffer mentally within their lifetime. At the moment, we're at 42%. That is astounding. It just shows you how people's minds can change so dramatically when their circumstances change and what they had banked on with regards to career or the bank account, that the fear just kicked in. I find it really, really sad. But it is a wake-up call to everyone, exactly how deep and how bad mental health is. This might sound bad, but I'm kind of hoping that every shrink got it, because they just seem to be so aloof to mental health. Like, you sit with them and they always try to give you the wee positive pep talk. Oh, Graham, you're very negative. And my reply was always the same. Well, wait till it hits you. And I'm kind of hoping that it does hit them, so that, you know, when they get past it and back to work, that they will have a deeper appreciation for what people go through, and that we're not up in the ante, we're not making it up. It is hellish, and these guys need to know that. The other thing that is very interesting about mental health is a lot of people will say, well, it's only in your mind, maybe you should just get yourself back to work. But mental health doesn't just affect you mentally, it affects you physically. If you've got a serious illness with regards to mental health, you don't have the ability to go out running, you don't have the ability to go up parks, you just don't have the energy. One of the biggest things is fatigue. And I find myself, I'm on 3 different drugs, constantly exhausted, constantly tired. You're up in the morning and you actually feel like I sleep for about 10 hours at night, and I wake up thinking, I could do with another 10. In the afternoon, 2 or 3 hours in bed at 10 at night. So it's constantly tired. Whether that's from the illness or from the medication, it doesn't matter. You're just gubbed constantly. It says also that the pain that you experience increases. So you have a low tolerance for pain. And I've noticed that myself. Simple, silly little things like stubbing the toe. You just want to put carnage through the house. So you start to feel things with more intensity within your bones, within your muscles. Aching muscles is a big one. I've had that quite a lot. I used to have phantom pains within my tummy, and it was like cramps, and it was just like they investigate and there's nothing there. So it's like your mind is sending signals to your body that you're in pain, but there's actually nothing wrong with you. How do you beat that? That's a hard one. Headaches is another one that you can get through medications. I never really suffered from headaches myself. Many people get them and they can be that debilitating. I suppose a bit as intense as a migraine, that people can't get out of bed. So it's, it really changes your life. It goes from living an active life to a life that is diminished in many, many ways. Your vision can get bad. I have blurred vision from time to time, and you just can't seem to focus. So driving was something I had to give up because, I couldn't really see what was coming ahead of me, or I was having double vision. There was two cars coming towards me, one on each side. So that's a bad one. The abdomen can take quite a hitting. It's shown that stress and anxiety can really damage your tummy. I mean, I've got IBS and I suffer from gastritis. So, obviously it's down to my lifestyle, but it's also down to the stress that my mind goes through and my body is reacting within that. One of the things I've had as well is the pounding heart. You actually feel like you're having a heart attack. From what people have said who've had it, your heart just takes off and you get that little flutter as well. I get that a lot. It's quite scary. You honestly think this is your time. I mean, I'm when I start getting the pounding heart, I'm giving myself the last rites, and I'm not even Catholic. Dizziness is a common one. You're trying to walk up an aisle in Asda and you just start stotting straight into the stuff. So I've had that as well. The frequency in peeing is a bad one. I was up at one point 10 times a night, just pee. I got to the point where I didn't think there was any water left in me to pee. Shortness of breath is another one. I get it because I'm a fat twat. But you also get it with stress and anxiety when your mind starts to become stressed, that your breathing gets affected by it, and it can be quite scary, that as well. Not being able to catch your breath, it is very scary. Actually, I've got it now. So there you go. You can either say it's the illness, the medication, or the fact that I'm fat. And the other one is twitches. I've seen that a lot in people where the muscles just move involuntarily, so they're sitting there. I had it earlier actually, my shoulder went like that, and I thought somebody had whacked me from behind. So mental health doesn't just affect your mind, it affects your entire body. And that's what makes it so difficult to deal with, because you start to get sick mentally, and then you start to get sick physically, and your whole lifestyle that you had before, your career has to be stopped, your relationships start to get affected, every area of your life changes, and it's a terrible change. It's a very, very difficult change to live with. I was just thinking that I used to get this thing in my eye where my eye would twitch like that, basically. And I used to work with British Telecom, and they all thought I was winking at them. To start with, they all thought I was coming on at them. One guy who was gay, he's like, "Hey Graham, how you doing?" I said, "It's my eye, there's a twitch." He's like, "Aye, right, big boy." So that was a difficult one. I actually had it the night when a pal was in, and I was sitting winking at him, and I don't know, I was in a cafe. And it's horrible. It just makes you feel like a complete zoomer. But I have that quite a lot. When I get really stressed, it just starts kicking off. And I'm feared to go out because you're like winking at everybody. It'd be better getting a patch, I think. When you think of the 62% increase in mental health problems, and people now dealing with mental health because of the pandemic, I wonder how they would feel now if we said to them what they said to us when we were getting sick. All the different things that they tried to say which they felt was encouraging, but were things that you took and thought, "I'm going to smash your head in if you didn't walk away from me." People have said to me, "It isn't that bad." Well, people are now seeing that it is. The domestic violence has gone up dramatically. People are realising that trying to deal with the headspace can be extremely difficult, to the point that you start lashing out. People have said to me, "It's all in your head," and I'm like, well, obviously. But it's not just all in your head, it's physically as well. They don't seem to understand that if you're mentally ill, why are you so tired all the time? Well, that's down to the stress that's in your mind, and also medication doesn't help with that either. I've had the one where we all get stressed and anxious. There's nothing special about you. Well, there is actually, because I have it chronically. There's one thing about going through stuff like this for a period. There's another going through this for your life journey to be categorised by a chronic sickness. Try living with that. I mean, a lot of people, the worst people to be around, the people who've had a dose of depression and got better, because it's always, if I got better, you can get better. But there is a difference between circumstantial depression and chronic depression that people don't seem to realise. The other great one that I love to come out with, you're very negative. Maybe if you be positive, your mind will get better. Really? I've had one years and years ago. I think you should pull your socks up and get on with it. Well, I was pulling my socks up that far. I was like Simon Cowell, they were up around my waist. And do you know what? I didn't get better. I was told I was lazy and I didn't want to work, which is the complete opposite. I enjoyed working because I enjoyed working beside the people I was around who were a good laugh. And I certainly do miss the Christmas parties that we used to go to. I mean, they were just like, woof, dodgy. So I do, I'm not lazy at all. I get it constantly, and I have to agree with it. You're such a moaner. I think if anyone's dealing with a chronic sickness, you will moan about it, because apart from the fact that you feel there's an injustice in the world, you are actually in pain. And in pain you cry out. We all do. I've been told I was a attention seeker with my illness, which is absolutely flipping hilarious given the fact that I think there's about 2 people in my life at the moment. So if I was feigning illness to get people in my life, it hasn't worked, and I would have stopped it. But I'm sick and I can't seem to be around people. And then I was told the Belter, which really goes against BBT, it's only your emotions. Only your emotions. We're currently seeing within 6 to 8 months what emotions can do to people, the distraught that's happening in people's homes. At this point, I think you'd expect me to scream at the screen and say, well, we told you so. And part of me is kind of saying that because we've told you for years how bad mental health is. But when I see the suffering that's happening in our world today, and not just mentally, if you've suffered for a long time, it affects you. And it's sad to see anyone sick. My merit in life was always to try and help people so that they didn't get as sick as I did. Because sickness comes in many forms. It's not just mental health. Mental health is debilitating, but there's so many other things as well. I watch a lot of documentaries. Actually, I was just watching that Embarrassing Bodies. I've got one that's huge, and it's like people are suffering from things that you wouldn't imagine would be having an effect, but it's causing them great pain within their bodies and within society. If it's visual, people don't want to go out the door. When life hurts, it feels like our world has stopped. When we're in pain, our trajectory in life is completely different from what it was before. And also when we see our loved ones hurt, our children hurt, we actually hurt with them. We feel their pain, we worry for them, we pray they'll get better, and life would have a better quality for them. That's the one thing about God as well. He didn't want your life to be the way it is. God feels everything that you go through every single day. He knows about it, he watches it, and he feels it for you. There's a story in the Bible, it's in Luke chapter 11 if you want to look it up at some point. And it talks about one of Jesus' friends, a chap called Lazarus. Now Lazarus, I need to slow down, was sick and died. And Jesus was a bit away, but then moved over to try and help Mary and Martha, who were his sisters. When Jesus saw the crowds in the morning, he was upset himself to the point that he was extremely angry. And extremely distraught, as the translation comes through, that his friend had died, to the point that the shortest verse in the Bible is called Jesus Weeps, and that's exactly what Jesus did. But to think that Jesus was actually God himself, who can give life and eternal life, actually weeping at the distress that death brings into our lives, he wept for that, and also the pain that comes before death. Jesus is weeping for people. With a man who can restore life was weeping because he feels our hurts, our pains, and our sorrows. Everything that we experience, he is with us, and in his love and in his care, he is looking on us with love and tears. That is a God that I believe in, someone who understands and who is with us and doesn't leave us when we start to struggle in life. All these talks are just basically aimed at looking at certain subjects from my angle. They're certainly not theological academic papers for you to digest. They're just talks about consider God again, to consider, if there is a God, and to consider how God would work in your life. But I realise what I'm asking you to believe is quite difficult. If you've been brought up in a home without religion, or you've been down the atheist route, it's going to be difficult to believe in some of the spectacular things that are in the Bible. I mean, one of the big ones is that there's a spirit world. I think people are starting to hook onto this now because, spirits at churches, spirits at cafes, tarot cards, Ouija boards, people are open to the spirit world. But people who have not, had that in their lives, we're asking you to open to that. I'm asking you to believe in a person who had the ability to take away sickness, to restore a deformed hand, to bring people back to life. I'm asking you to believe in some that we haven't seen. I'm asking you to believe in a man who was crucified, who died, yet rose from the grave. The tomb was opened and he walked free. I'm asking you to believe in a Jesus who ascended to God. He's no longer with us. He beat death and he's went home. I'm asking you to believe that one day he will return for you because he loves you, and through faith in him, he wants to lead you to an eternal life with him. And some of these things are quite difficult to think of, and unless we see it as human beings, we have a tendency not to believe it. I struggle with faith at times, trying to believe certain things that I've read, and even sometimes just believing that there is a God. And yet at times we open our eyes and we can see the majestic power that lives in this earth, the beauty of the heavens within themselves. We have the clouds, we have the rain, we have the beautiful blue skies, we have the red skies at night. That majesty and that beauty that changes is incredible to watch. Think of the colours of little birds, of little butterflies, that, it says that there are millions of chances that one thing would come into being, but the fact that there's so many species, so many beautiful colours put together, the amazing texture of these things is incredible. The changes in seasons, think about that every year, the 4 seasons. Every year they come along. They give us the sunshine, they replenish the earth, which help us with food. So they're being maintained and they're beautiful. And every year is the exact same season. The millions of species of animals, wee crawly things that you wouldn't even want to touch. The ants, the spiders, all these little creatures made to perfection, made within their little shells beautifully. We have 7 billion people on the planet and everyone is different. How incredible is that? That we all look the same, act the same, but are completely different within our personalities. I mean, I must admit, I'm glad there's no 7.4 billion fatties in the world, or I'd be struggling to eat myself, and I do eat quite a lot. And you think about if you've got a kid, when you look at that little child, you look at that little face, and you watch that little face develop. It's the most beautiful thing that you can imagine. And as that little child grows, as the bones and the muscles go and the intelligence comes in and the baby starts to walk and talk, it is the most majestic thing that is on our planet. And all that comes from fluid, simple as that. And yet from that fluid grows bones, grows muscle, grows intelligence, and a soul was put in it by the breath of God. We look at our world and people are always asking for miracles. They're always wanting to see this manifestation of God. And yet miracles surround us. Every day is a miracle. Not promised, but it's given to us in love. I just ask you to consider, look at creation. Look at the awesomeness that creation holds. And ask yourself, is there something more? Is there something with the power to hold us together? To think that every day we have breath, to think that every day we have life, to think every day that we didn't just shoot up into the air because of gravity, to think that the world is suspended and turned as a ball. It's not flat, it's round. And it sits in space. That is unanswerable through atheism. By faith in God, it's answerable. And that's all I ask you to think about. Think about the beauty that we see. And that beauty comes from somewhere. And I believe it comes from God. And I believe that in Jesus, we have access to God through faith in him. Again, I ask you to read Romans 10:9 and John 3:16. And to open up your mind again, just to have a look again at what God is, who he claims to be, and what he did for us. I believe he's a God of love. Sometimes it's difficult to understand. And one thing I will say is I'm going to do a podcast with a friend in the next 4 days or so. And we're going to look at creation and